Does anyone get any questions? Anyone get any questions? I may not be able to answer them if they're technical, so a little worried. Tony.
I think I really like the way you established in the first part of your presentation how basically anybody who dissents from your view is a Luddite. But I'm going to launch into that anyway. And of course, there's been constant tension between the Luddites and the so-called Fabianists who embrace change almost for change's sake, but go through it in the process of evolution rather than revolution. I really like the comment that you made that time wasting using social media, and I guess I'm trying to distinguish between what you described as Facebook, which is a lot of noise, and it's great if you want to find out what's happening with Farm Bill, but not so much if you want to find out what's happening with clinical advances, is a function of human nature rather than a function of technology. I think that process and how management responds to innovation technology really depends on three variables. Obviously the technology itself and how easy it is to use and misuse and abuse. The maturity of management in terms of embracing that, but also the maturity of the community of users. And I think you highlighted the difference between the approach that's here and the approach that's in the US. Now the technology obviously is the same, that kind of stuff is ubiquitous and spreads out to fill the available volume. I suspect management is slower off the mark here in terms of lagging it, but I also think that the community that's using this in the States is a lot more mature. I think you could infer from what you said, I think so, a lot more mature in the States. I think there's been a lot more development around it. It seems to be leading us, I think. I think you could infer from your comments that the instant knee-jerk reaction to Facebook was to shut down internet access, which wasn't the case. There had been a lot of work done on changing human behaviour. As you say, a lot of it is about human behaviour. Facebook wasn't the most commonly abused site. Realestate.com was the most commonly abused site.
And that's a fair point. And to a certain extent, that whole, there's a certain devil's advocacy there. There's no question that there is abuse. I'm not denying that. There has definitely been abuse of that stuff. But what I would say is the response to that of banning access in that scenario is not the correct response. I think the correct response is to not just say, if you use it, this will happen, but here's how to use it properly. Here's how to encourage people to use it. Here's how to encourage people not to abuse it.
And I agree with what I think you're saying, in that policy or an action such as that is not the way to manage technology and innovation. I agree with that entirely. What it is a mechanism to manage human behaviour, which at the end of the day is what a policy framework has to be about. And there had been a lot of work done on actually trying to address that. The problem was, I think, that there weren't the structures in place in terms of how people interact with each other, but also an understanding of the appropriateness of, or inappropriateness, I should say, of that abuse to actually utilise those mechanisms. It may be worth revisiting now.
Absolutely, and I totally agree with you. I'm absolutely against abuse of this stuff. I'm absolutely against the time wasting aspects. But what I would say is that it is really, really clear that the response to that is not to ban the medium. It's actually to get people how to use it. If you say it's no different to me than saying because you read crap novels from the airport lounge or rubbish rubbish magazines, you therefore are not allowed to read. Like, it's just insane. I think it's completely insane. And I acknowledge that there are things that we're trying to be addressed. I just don't think that's the correct way to address them. And you're right, revisiting it I think would be a fantastic idea. By all means, restrict certain websites, block certain websites. Don't block the internet.
I have to say that was explored. That was the first option that we tried to explore, and it seemed that we were unable to do that. I guess the only difference I have with your analogy is if I'm paying you to read crap airport novels, then I would say that I have some responsibility for increasing the quality of what you're taking in. I think there's a difference between what you do and the access to your own media versus the impact of that abuse on the service that you're trying to provide. I think that's what's being addressed.
But for example, if management was to say you cannot use Twitter at work, for example, my access to how, to me, that's like saying you can't go to the library because that's how I use it. And I object to the fact that because one person uses it in a way that is time wasting, that resource gets taken from people who use it in a different way. And I think the answer there is educating people how to use this stuff appropriately.
And if it were one person going on to realestate.com, I'd agree with you.
Can we open up the discussion, gentlemen?
we'll finish this later.